Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan, and you may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from the secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychak. And welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychak. Tonight we got a great show on tap, as always. Bottom of the hour, we got Lori Scmidt. She's going to be joining us from International Wolf Center. You're going to want to hear this. It's all about our friends, the wolves, and how they impact us, and how they impact the environment, and how important they are to the environment. A lot of great stuff I did not even know about wolves. That's coming up, bottom of the hour. You want to hear that. Again, Lori Scmidt, International Wolf Center. Sorry about that. Ely, Minnesota. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. And we're going to be giving website stuff, information while she's talking, all that kind of good stuff. We really appreciate you guys tuning in like you guys have and supporting this show as we go. Merry Christmas, Doug.
Merry Christmas, Joel.
We are right there, and tomorrow is Christmas Eve as we record this.
It's a little Christmassy out there.
It is. It is. We've got a giant snowstorm rolling
That's crazy.
through, encompassing pretty much the entire Midwest, as far as Minnesota, Iowa, and parts of the Dakotas right now coming through. So they're telling me here where I am, which is north of Duluth, Minnesota, about a foot of snow to expect. I know the cities, you're getting about right around that same average, right, Doug?
Yeah, actually, we're going to have some 3-foot drifts probably in the morning.
Man.
It's crazy.
I own a plow truck, and so, of course, I'm everyone's best friend as soon as the snow comes. Every other time of the year, or every other part, they're like, I even know who you are. Once the snow comes, they're all my best friends. Like, I can't figure out why.
You're my best friend suddenly, too, now.
Right? You're a little out of the range of the old plow, but I might know a guy that knows a guy.
200 miles, Joel? It's easy.
Nah. It would be an honor just to hang out with you again anyway. Sure, I'll be there tonight. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So are you all ready for the Christmas holiday, Doug?
Sort of. I've got a lot of guilt I'm carrying.
Oh, no.
Well, it's kind of like, oh, no, I didn't get anything for my boys.
Are you, a last-minute Christmas shopper?
Oh, no, just didn't do it.
Just...
So,
when you give the kids to have everything.
But I have a backup plan. I got a big stack of those, universal cards.
Yeah.
You just stuff cash. You throw 100 in. You go, it's kind of cheap. You throw another one in. You feel a little better, and you go, just throw one more in there. And you're like, oh, they'd really like 4.
Well, so you just keep stuffing with hundreds till you feel that they're going to be happy?
Yeah, you stuff windows.
Well, I want to become your son.
Yeah. You still feel guilty.
Yeah. I was actually ahead of the game this year, and I had all my shopping done fairly early. Thanks to Amazon and all that kind of good stuff. Made it really easy.
Dollar store?
Well, I tried. I did that last year, but nobody seemed to appreciate my frugal shopping habits. So this year they didn't want, silly putty and canned ham, canned ham that you get from Guatemala.
Yeah.
They didn't want any of that.
Yeah.
So this year actually expired by 3 years. So
oh my God, Joel! I saw this thing on YouTube where I think it was Joe Souchere, who's a radio host. Somebody went to the dollar store and bought him a whole bunch of food, and they were going to eat it for lunch. He actually tried a shrimp.
Oh, I don't know if I would do a dollar store shrimp.
Oh my God. Ugh.
Joe, I know Joe, and I could see him eating dollar store food.
Yeah.
I could envision this. I could definitely envision.
Better watch what you say.
Yeah, right. No, Joe Souchere he's a broadcasting legend.
He is. He really is.
And a great guy on top of it. So,
Correct.
he is still broadcasting even to this day. So if you are a fan of Garage Logic, we're going to give a unsolicited plug to our good friend Joe Souchere. You can catch his podcast. It's still out there. So if you ever get to missing Mr. Joe Souchere and you were a fan, he is podcasting the show.
You know why Joe is so funny?
Why is that?
Because he doesn't try to be funny. He just says dumb shit sometimes.
Yeah, that is true. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You know what I mean?
And it's very endearing, is what it is.
Yeah, he's endearing. One day he was reading something and he read it Vinegar. And of course he was immediately corrected. Do you mean vinegar? And of course I spit my coffee out.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. It's just those funny moments. Well, it's live radio, baby. I mean, that's part of live radio.
Yeah.
It has a certain magic about it that, if you mess up, it's there for the world to hear. Live radio. There is no going back and fixing that.
Yep. No, you're right.
So what's on the menu for moving along, though? What's on the menu for Christmas Eve in the High Check household?
Oh, nothing. Not really much. Kids will sneak over and sneak out under the cover of darkness.
Right. We're going to do the prime rib dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Prime rib.
All I'm having is the yams.
But they're real yams.
No, there's yams everywhere.
That's what I mean. They're real, though.
Yams
She's going to peel them and prepare them.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's the real deal right there.
But Joel, that's all I'm seeing.
I'm gonna get you some dollar store canned yams.
Yeah.
And I'll send them to you. Best that Guatemala could provide.
No,
Maybe
Yvette's
give that a try.
She'll cook up some good.
Sounds good to me, Doug. Again, Merry Christmas to all of our listeners out there. Thank you guys for tuning in yet again. We got a little bit of news to get to here. We got some strange news, some different news, but definitely some fun news coming at you. Hey, did you know that kangaroos are can converse in some ways, much like dogs and humans?
Yeah.
Okay, number one, why would I want to talk to a kangaroo? They are violent. I mean, they are uber violent.
Well, it's a study. They did a study to see how their intelligence, just to see if they would look at them and do begging.
Yeah, just little things like do they possess the same notion of communications with humans
like a dog
that dogs and cats and other domesticated animals do? And they're talking about kangaroos in the wild, mind you, not the ones that they pet and they know every day and they've got rapport with. They're talking kind of like domesticated as well kangaroos. Big words are hard today. And they're talking that the ones that are kind of shire breed, which are the red kangaroos, they even attempt to talk with humans in a sort of gesturing way.
Isn't it the red kangaroo that's the one that will literally punch your lights out?
It'll kick your ass in 2.1 seconds, man. Yeah. It is like Mike Tyson after a rage. I mean, it's all over.
Oh my God. I've seen some of the videos. They're amazing. They'll get big muscles.
Oh my
big
God,
biceps.
they look like bodybuilders.
Yeah. Yeah.
They look like bodybuilders. And you're right, though. They will attack people. I mean, there's videos all over the place of kangaroos not only fighting each other, but walking up to people on the street and just punching them.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be walking by their own business. This is a kangaroo to knock the lights out.
Joel, once again, it's a scientific study that was wasted.
It was. It was.
You walk on two legs and punch people.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably smart.
I want to say I don't want to be part of that study.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think I want to risk myself.
Where do you come up with these studies, Joe?
Well, I scour the internet day and night until I find just the right story for that segment. Moving along to our second story, which really makes no difference to me because I'm an angry person by nature. Being nice to people is good for you. Well, screw that. Okay, what they're saying here.
Not healthy.
Just because Betty Lowe lived to be 96 years old and being a nice lady and all that wonderful stuff doesn't necessarily mean I want to. But if you believe this study, if you're nice to people, you're 24% lower risk of early death. If you're nice. But that's the same risk if you smoke a cigarette, right? Roughly, you're going to die young, 25% chance of dying young.
So what you're telling me, if you smoke and are nice, it equalizes it.
I would think so. So it's kind of like smoke them if you got them, as long as you tell the guy hi and nice to see you and stuff like that. You're in good shape.
Or you can quit smoking and be really mean, and that's equal.
That is true. That is true. Oh, no, it's not equal. Because if you're mean, conversely, you have a 38% risk of dying young.
You said 24%.
24% risk of dying early if you're not nice. Right, okay. But if you're nice, you have a 38% chance of living longer if you're nice.
Okay, that math does not work.
Well, that's what the study says. They're dug math in studies doesn't have to work.
Regardless, one way or the other, things can equal. Zero.
That is true. That is true. Zero. Well, go to zero?
Yeah, no. Zero. If you quit smoking,
yes,
it neutralizes zero.
Well, let me read this for you. Let me read the important meat of the study.
Okay.
Studies show, for instance, the volunteering it correlates with a 24% lower risk of early death. If you're a volunteer somewhere, if you're like work at a hospital, being nice to people all day, which I don't recommend. But if you decide to, not these days right now, I would not step foot in a hospital.
Joel is just kidding.
Yeah, I am just kidding. About the same as eating 6 or 7 servings of fruits or vegetables. You get the same benefit being nice as eating fruits and vegetables. Which makes no sense to me at all because they're not related anyway. Okay. Anyhow.
But then, what if you're nice and eat fruits and vegetables?
Well, it doesn't really talk about that because now if you volunteer and you're nice, it also has been led to a lower risk of high blood glucose, meaning diabetes risks go down. I'm not understanding how the physiology of this all works because, I don't understand it, Doug. I am at a loss right here.
You've painted yourself into a corner.
I have painted myself in the proverbial corner, have I not?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're also nice, it lowers risks of the inflammation in your body. You're not so much. And connected to the heart disease, they also say that if you're nice, people do live longer. Let's just say. I mean, everybody that I know that's lived really, really long was not nice. I don't know about you, but I haven't met a jolly old person. I met plenty of angry old people that have lived to be way too long, and they're like, why the hell am I still here?
Yeah, you had a point.
Even Billy Joel wrote a song, Only the Good Die Young.
Yeah, you got a point. Well, then why are we reading this study? Let's move on.
Because I picked it because I was trying to do a nice feel-good story for the holidays, and it didn't make me feel good at all.
And you were telling everybody you were mean.
I'm not mean. I really am not mean. I am a nice guy.
You're one of the nicest people I know.
Well, thank you, Doug. I try to be. I try to be nice. But I try to treat everybody like the golden rule that we learned in school. Treat everyone the way you'd want to be treated, and you'll be just fine in life.
Then why are we talking about this story?
Because I found it humorous. I wanted to get your take on mean people, on whether or not they live.
I swear to God, I'm going to take over the news selection.
Hey, did you know the Milky Way is probably full of dead people?
Okay.
Okay. According to science, most of the alien civilizations that ever dotted the galaxy have probably killed themselves off already. God. Talk about a feel-good story to go with.
Oh, is this the one with the analytics where it goes, this civilization was 5 billion years old and they annihilated themselves?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, pretty much, yeah. The takeaway of the new study published December 14th, database which shows modern astronomy and yada, yada, yada. Okay, folks, I'm not going to read this wordy science document to you. What it basically is saying in a nutshell is they lived long enough to kill themselves. Because civilization is really good at one thing.
Joel, stop. It says annihilated themselves.
Yeah, annihilated themselves.
Yeah, just like, it didn't say an asteroid hit them.
No,
say
they did to themselves.
It annihilated themselves.
Exactly.
After surviving 5 billion years.
That's what I'm saying. People or things, societies, have always been self-destructive.
But not after 5 billion years.
We don't know because we're not 5 billion years old. Look at us. We're still trying to kill ourselves. I mean, either we're really bad at it or we don't mean it. One of the two.
Yeah, well, our civilization is, what, a couple 100,000 years old, maybe?
I would say that. But no, the study is very fascinating, though, if you are interested in that at all. Live Science published this article, and it takes us through a walk through what could have been or what may be, and the different reasons why these civilizations, because of their age and because of, if they have, like, for instance, 10 million years on us, even 100,000 years on us, they're further along in their evolution of society, that there could have been a reason for the demise. And usually demise is self-inflicted when it comes to societies, is what they're saying.
Yeah, but not 5 billion years. If you survive that many years, oh my God, you're not going to annihilate yourself.
I understand what you're saying, that they should have passed that point.
Yeah, probably.
At 5 billion years old.
I would think.
And they should be just fine.
1 million years, you've bypassed that.
I would hope so, but
there's
a range of factors.
When I read it, I looked at it and I went, bad data in, bad data out.
It's all bad data. It's all bad. It's flawed. It's a flawed study, is it not?
Extremely in my book.
It is a flawed study.
Yep.
And the reason why I shared that was because I found it somewhat interesting of this, but at the same time, it's kind of depressing that it wasn't they were hit by a meteor, but they annihilated themselves, which speaks to, their need or want to kill themselves or get annihilated by their own, for whatever reason. It doesn't give a rosy outlook, is what I'm saying, on life out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where I'm going with that, Doug?
Yep. Let's talk about something else.
Okay. Let's talk about, let's see, what else
Facebook. Facebook.
I know. Here we go, because this can create some rants here. Okay, Doug.
All right.
Facebook first I want to say, Facebook is an imperfect place.
Yes.
Doug, you have the floor.
No, I was just going to say that I finally got on Facebook, as you know.
Yep.
After 15 years of holding off, just ignoring it. But then, I think it was you. You're the guy. Talked me into it.
I did. I remember
did it. But you did.
Talking with you about it.
So I did it. And right away, I'm getting friend requests by scamsters. Different people.
You know,
yeah.
that is a danger of Facebook. I have met more, or I have been contacted by Facebook, or people on Facebook. They're scammers. I would say I get a lot of legitimate requests to be a connection.
Yeah.
But for every one legitimate request, there must be 5 to 10 unlegitimates, scammers out there.
Right. Maybe. Well, I don't get that many, but so I've gotten like almost, I'm getting close to 500 people. You know,
That's good.
2-3
That's good.
weeks or whatever.
You're growing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm growing. I'm not like you, who's got 2.5 million friends, but
Yeah. Well, but I think you had a great idea to do with these scammers.
well, yeah,
I do.
well, that's what I'm getting at. Okay, so you get these people that apparently take a picture of an attractive lady, just copy and paste off the internet, put up this website. They have no friends, no posts, and they want to be your friend. So I have this idea, setting up another, even with a fictitious name. You set up a site, you have these people try to scam you, but then you befriend every scammer. So now you have 500 scammers for friends.
So like a scammer island.
Yeah,
only on
and they're all
Facebook,
trying
digitally.
to scam. Well, the whole idea is they're going to try to scam all your friends. So for fun, I clicked one, and I thought I knew exactly what's going to happen. So I clicked this one right away. Bam! Everybody I knew got the same request.
Mm-hmm.
And now some of them even called me. And they're trying to educate me. And I'm like, I know.
I know. Call my co-host.
Anyhow,
He's the one that made me come on
well,
here.
what would happen? I wonder if anybody's done that. Taken and gotten 500 scammer friends. Then let them all try to scam each other.
I wonder if that hasn't happened. Because you would think that there's a scammer connection and they all know each other.
As creative as I am, comes to these kind of ideas.
I get it. A group just for scammers. I mean, or you befriend all. You make another. Let me see if I'm following you here.
Okay.
You make another profile that's just for the scammers that they all want to befriend you.
Yes.
You befriend all these scammers.
No. You make your profile look really good, like you're rich and you're.
Oh yeah, like the Arab prince that's trying to.
Yeah, like you're really successful. Just to lure them in, like a fishing lure.
Gotcha.
And they all start coming, and you just have fun going. You get rid of the regular people. You delete those. You just go confirm on the scammers.
And then once they're all on your friends list, I get it. And then the scammers would start asking you to be the friends with the other scammers.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it's intermingling of scamming going on. Gotcha now. Gotcha.
Scammer plot.
Gotcha. But have you ever? I have tried to scam the scammers back in the past.
Yeah.
When they've gotten a hold of me. Because right away what they'll do is after I have in the early days of, I suppose, 10 years ago or so, I was on Facebook and of course right away, scam. Well, I didn't know any better at that time, so I thought these are real people just for a brief nanosecond.
Yeah.
So of course, as soon as you hit the friend, be friends, they message you.
Woman wants to be my friend.
Right? Yeah, what? She wants to be my friend? All right. But as soon as you say yes, they message you right away with their game of, I desperately need your help. I am trapped in Uganda.
Well, right away they go, hi, how are you?
Hi there. How are you? And in broken English.
Yeah.
It's usually in broken English.
And of course, they're probably some 90-year-old guy in, like you said, Bangladesh.
In his underwear.
Well, Ray doesn't have any. It's not, you know what I mean? They're just obviously grabbing any image and sticking it in there.
But scamming like this is not new. Remember all the emails we got from, everyone did, or most people I know anyway, got that, like, what one was the Arab prince, that he needed $2,500 because he's for legal fees or what have you, because he's owed this vast amount of money.
Yeah.
And then if you just give him, the $2,500 for his legal fund, that he will then turn around and give you $15 million the next day.
Those aren't real.
In a thank you. No, they're not real, Doug. I'm sorry, Doug. I'm sorry.
Are you
They're not real. You might as well give me $2,500, Doug. Oh. I mean, it's the same thing. At least I'd be going for a good cause.
Still waiting for my $20 million to be deposited.
I know. Me too. But that just never happened.
Oh my God! I got to tell you this story. So I got this letter, and it said, "You want a free boat and motor?" And of course, call this number and just give me your credit card number for shipping.
Sure.
So I, of course, tear it in half, throw it in my garbage can. Well, of course, the guy who's dumping the garbages saw that.
No.
So he calls them and gives him his credit card number.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, Gary, because this package came, and I happened to see it, and I said, "Did you by any chance go digging in my garbage?" And he's like, yeah, they charged me like $2,000 for shipping, and he got a blow up raft. I'm not joking. He got a blow up raft with a little tiny DC electric motor, that would fit in the palm of your hand, with a rod coming off it and a little tiny plastic propeller. So he got his boat motor.
It wasn't a complete lie.
No.
It just wasn't the boat and motor that was shown in the picture.
Yep. So don't dig in somebody's garbage.
No, don't do that. Definitely don't do that. And there's a scam out there for everything. We're seeing a lot more scams now because of what we have going on in the world than we were before. Especially, I remember the scams really hit hard when people were getting their stimulus checks.
Oh, God, yes.
There was a huge spike in scams. I mean, it was like they hit scam overdrive.
Yep.
And they were going crazy. And I'm going to suspect the same thing will happen in the future should we get another stimulus check.
Yeah, with everybody doing everything online nowadays, I mean, it's just rape. I got a voicemail message. Oh my God, I could play it tonight. It's a recording, but it's in bad English, and it's saying, "This is Amazon. You order package. You call full free. Blah blah blah." And they're just trying to get your credit card number or something.
Yeah. I like the ones that call up and say, "This is the IRS, and this is your final notice."
You're going to jail. Oh, yeah.
I've called that number, right?
Yeah.
And talked with them just to see what their game was, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, well, if they're going to lie, I'm going to lie.
It's some guy.
I would say, well, that's funny because I am the IRS. And they're like, oh my God. And they can't hang up fast enough. I'll call back. Why'd you hang up on me? We know who you are. We're coming to get you. And then they start swearing at you. So it's a scam. But yeah, those are good old days.
Yeah, it's just like, I do feel bad for people who aren't familiar with all these different scams, because they come at you from email, from voicemail, and that threatening one. Oh my God, think of the people that scared the heck out of.
Yeah, I remember a lot of seniors in my life, especially the seniors, because they're not really up on the new scams and the new game. Yep. I had a couple of my mother, for one, got a call that was like that, and it really scared her until I kind of talked to her about it, and I called the number that they provided because they wouldn't leave her alone.
Yep.
They were harassed, and she made the mistake of actually engaging the person in conversation. And so I cleaned that up for her and stuff like that, but they were very intimidating. I mean, they really had her worried. And so to think that other people are going through that's, we laugh about it because we're aware of it. We understand the game. But someone like that doesn't quite understand what's going on, they only hear jail time. I understand the fear. It's horrible.
I got a
what they
call
do.
from one person who really said, "Is this real?" And they were like crying, and I'm like, "No, it's a scam. It's just are you sure it's a scam?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you hear this over the microphone. Do you hear rumble once in a while over my microphone? That's the wind outside.
I've got the
hitting my house.
Yep.
It is amazing, the noise. But we're going to get out of here. We come back. We're going to be talking.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon, and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
About the International Wolf Center with the curator of that Wolf Center, and that's Lori Scmidt. Don't go anywhere. Be right back right after this, and maybe the wind will calm down, God willing.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextsstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio. Untold Radio. Sorry about that. I got someone plowing out there. The city's actually plowing, Doug. I was just complaining. We're going to hook Lori up here from International Wolf Center here momentarily. And so we're going to get that ball rolling. And thank you for everyone for listening once again. And we're going to get that going so we can start the conversation with Lori, because there's a lot to learn here, a lot to unpack. So we will do that now. And she is indeed now online, so we will be adding her. So here we go. So I do apologize for the hesitation in broadcast, guys. We've got some weird weather events going on, so bear with us. So that is exactly what we're doing. But I do find wolves to be just fascinating. How about you, Doug?
Well, you know the name of my company, White Wolf Entertainment.
Exactly.
Just love them.
Yeah, they're an amazing creature, and a lot of us don't realize how important they are to our ecosystem. Lori, are you with us? We will continue to try to add Lori to this conversation, but Doug, as we were just saying, it's they are more important than I think than some would give credit for.
Yeah, the discoveries that they're making from like studying small ecosystems like Yellowstone. I mean, it's crazy when I heard like the aspen trees are coming back along the streams.
Sure.
Because the erosion is dissipating. Because
exactly.
The deer aren't overpopulated.
Lori, are you with us?
I am with you. Yes.
All right, awesome. A little bit of a hiccup there with stuff going on because I do believe the storm. And I just want to introduce you to everyone that's listening. Lori Scmidt is the curator of the International Wolf Center in Ely, Minnesota. And she's going to speak with us tonight about the importance of wolves, what's happening with wolves, and how they impact our environment and the ecosystem around them, and what roles they play in those ecosystems. Lori, again, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Yes, well, thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem at all. So what kind of made a nice girl like you get involved with the Wolf Center?
Well, I started actually working with wolves in 1986. I was, I guess my background is I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and moved to Ely in 1981 and had 2 years of college in me from Vermilion Community College, and then I started working actually on a research project for NASA, actually doing some ecological studies, forest habitat type studies, and lo and behold, I liked Ely. I decided to stay and hooked up with Jim Brandenburg, who is a local photographer, and did a little volunteer work with him, and by 1989, the International Wolf Center opened, and I was able to find myself laid off from a tree planting job and took on the job as a curator in the spring of 1989, and that was the start of what we now know as the International Wolf Center.
Cool. Hey, Lori, this is Doug Haychek. I used to work with Jim, too.
Did you? Oh, cool.
Yeah. I used to do, some production work with him. But, man, what a great place he's got. And all the microphones that he had set up back in those days to study wolves and all the audio and to watch the ravens interact with the wolves. Just amazing.
Yeah, we did one of the studies on how far away can you be from a wolf howl where the wolves actually respond. And I was working with some captive wolves at the time, and Jim did all the audio work there as we were testing wolves' ability to hear distances, and I believe we hit 5 miles, where they were making calls. It was pretty wild. Yeah, but that was
is
a 30 below night.
amazing.
yeah,
I'm
it was
sorry
pretty cool.
there. That took me aback 5 miles because I'll call for my dog, and it's like she doesn't even hear me half the time. I think she's ignoring me is what it is. But wolves, 5 miles. That is just amazing. That hearing ability that they have.
Yep, they sure do it. And that was, like I say, a cold, crisp night with no leaves on the trees. So,
Whew, that is truly amazing. I kind of got a question. You know, I know all through history, wolves have always kind of been, I guess, the villain. You know, I mean, people like to villainize wolves because everyone thinks they're going to get attacked by wolves, and there's some myths I'd like to kind of dispel there. How often are humans attacked by wolves?
well, there's actually a pretty good research report that talks about that. We've had in Minnesota, there was a case over by western Minnesota, kind of western Itasca County, where there was an issue with a wolf that grabbed a camper by the head. But the data showing attacks by wolves is quite minimal, meaning that the circumstance where it's typically occurring, I would say, in research data, you'll see a case up in Alaska. There was a case with a group of miners at an oil field up in Canada. But again, the statistical data of your risk is minimal. And again, I'm not all that into percentages, but there's some really good publications out there if your listeners want to take a look at it. Habituated wolves can be an issue, meaning animals who have been fed by humans and taught to kind of hang around garbage. And you probably remember the old days when you go to the landfill before it was a transfer station. You could see bears there, you could see wolves there. And so that kind of habituation around people makes it a little bit more risky. But, an animal just in the wild would rather just stay away from people unless there's, like I say, some reason for food that would draw them towards them.
Are wolves able to be domesticated much like the dogs that we have in our homes right now, or is that just something that's really not a good idea?
Well, domestication is kind of the theory of domestication is that's a process where you've changed the brain, you've changed the physical body, you've changed the development to be a calmer version of its wild counterpart. So I work with wolves in captivity. I've worked with wolves since 1986. Every animal that I've worked with is still wild, even though we've socialized them, meaning we've brought humans into their realm so that they're accepting of humans, they'll greet humans, but we didn't change their brain, we didn't change their physiology. So like a dog, it has a smaller brain capacity than wolves, and they actually say that your dog, by being domesticated, is like the juvenile form of a wolf, meaning that it always looks for you to companionship, it doesn't test you, it doesn't, do some of those more adult-like canid behaviors. So is it a good idea? Well, when wolves reach about 2 years of age, they have a tendency to want to disperse, want to test for rank, they want to take over, and so that in your living room is problematic.
I was going to say.
Yeah, not to mention like raised leg urination, marking territory, those kinds of things. Housebreaking a wolf is tough because they're supposed to mark their territory. Even with some dogs, it's kind of tough. So a domesticated dog is got a lot of wolf-like traits, but over time and through breeding, we've calmed it so that it can manage to live with our environment. Wolves in a pen, not the same.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Have you ever had any issues with the captive wolves at the Wolf Center, Lori?
Yeah, well, we've had some. They test. I mean, they test on a regular basis. So we've had one handler who was fortunate enough to have a wallet in his back pocket. That the wolves on his way out the gate took his wallet and left the rest of his body. But we've been really, we have a really, I would say, a pretty strict protocol on handling, on how we interact with the wolves. We haven't had a bite wound issue since, like, I think 1998 was the last one. And, we learn, obviously biting is the best way to learn, when you don't do something right as a handler. So we're very, very serious about making sure that the interactions are all safe for the handlers.
So, I mean, basically, you're trying to become part of the pack, I would imagine. I'm just guessing, but.
Yeah, the theory is that they see us as social companions, but not probably as true pack members.
You're honorary, is what you're saying. You're kind of like an honorary, tolerated pack member.
Yeah, exactly. And we learn by their rules. And, the other thing, too, is we respect that. We don't roughhouse with them. I certainly don't fight over a deer carcass with them. I deliver a roadkill deer in a wheelbarrow. I certainly don't stay there to see if I get my share. So there's things that we don't engage in because obviously it crosses the line between handler and wolf.
I remember one time I was filming some captive wolves. It wasn't at the Wolf Center. It was somewhere else. And this wolf kept trying to leap at my face and with its teeth bared. And the person that was running the sanctuary said, "Oh, he's trying to click teeth with you." Does that make any sense? I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, some people call it jaw sparring. Both of them have their mouth open. You might see this in your dogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's opponents on Man versus Train. At the crossing, we have Rick, a 175-pound frustrated man who's running late for work. And on the tracks, we have Bull, a 1,000,000-pound freight train that takes a mile to stop. Let's see who comes out on top.
You can't beat a train, so don't try. Stop. Trains can't. Paid for by NHTSA.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
The dogs get together. They're clicking teeth. Their jaws are open, and it's a little bit of a rank order issue. But one of the things we know about canids is that direct eye stare is a challenge. Mm-hmm. And so when you see dogs who stare each other down, and the next thing you know, they're rolling around on the ground. So a camera lens is like the biggest eye the wolves have ever seen. So even as young pups, we have to be very cautious about they can have fear avoidance behavior because the eye of the camera is intimidating to them. And one of the other things, too, about handlers is we know that our dominance, or our ability to be more dominant than the wolves, is really related to our height. The fact that our eyes are up high and we're looking down on them, that creates a little bit of status for us. So a lot of times when people are meeting dogs, they crouch over, they get down low. Those are kind of submissive postures to try to greet somebody. So I would say that wolf was maybe even testing or challenging a little bit because of your camera. Showing more dominance towards them. So
all I know is after we allowed the wolves to do that, they just ignored us at that point and allowed us to get our film.
Sure, yeah. The test isn't going to take all day. A test is going to be: are you something that I have to be concerned with? Are you going to be a threat to my status? If you're not, let's go about our business. And so for us as handlers. Yeah, we get that every day. I mean, we go in and they're like, "Okay, I haven't seen you since yesterday. Did you trip? Did you fall? Are you old? And you're still good. Then go about your business." And they leave you alone.
Wow. So that's so what they do is there's a constant. Sounds like there's a constant battle for hierarchy in the pack.
Yeah, I wouldn't say battle as much as I always think about it as, if you're going to survive, you always want your strongest pack members first. And so the test to me, and if you go back, if people get a chance to watch like Arctic wolf footage or even Yellowstone footage, when wolves are out hunting alone, they kind of come back, they howl, they rally, they get back together, and everybody kind of postures and says, okay, did you lose something? Did you get injured? Are you still going to lead this pack? And they reassure each other, yep, I'm still good, and then conflict is over. So a lot of people see that hierarchy as fighting, but in fact, it probably avoids a lot of fighting because it's posturing. It's saying, I'm good, you can trust that I'm going to lead this pack, and back off. And so it is a communication. They always say with dogs, dogs will keep testing their limits until you show them some boundaries. I think a lot of that is wolf behavior.
Gotcha. Now, one thing I have seen quite a bit as hunting deer over the years is the lone wolf, and I've often wondered what now when you see a wolf that's alone. Is that not because it's alone, or is it scouting? What's the deal with those lone wolves that we see away from their packs? What purpose is that serving?
Sure. So what's happens during the summertime, there can be a lot of lone wolves because they're hunting things like fawns and calves and beaver. So you don't need a whole pack to go kill a beaver and bring it back to the pups. So summertime, there's a lot of wolves that are coming and going from den sites that are getting smaller prey to bring back to the pups. But during deer season, you're probably seeing the biggest, I would say, pressure on a pack to feed the pups because pups are getting big, pups are taking a lot of resources. And so sometimes the young adults, maybe, a year to 3 years of age, they disperse and they leave their pack. And so they're going to try to find a mate and they're going to try to find their own territory, probably because of food stress. There's just not enough to go around, or maybe they don't want to be subordinate to their parents anymore, so they kind of look their way and head out. So if you look at Wisconsin's wolf population and Michigan's, that really essentially came from dispersing wolves out of Minnesota. So in the fall, especially in deer season, is one of the biggest dispersal times. So you'll see that loner, and its function is obviously reducing pack pressure, but also gene pool. I mean, you're looking at, two wolves get together that are not related. That's genetic diversity, and they're going to start a pack, and they're going to start a family, and they're going to expand their range. In Minnesota, the range expansion has been going on, since wolves were protected in the 70s. And so we used to be just here in the north, in the forested region, and then they kind of extended down towards Hinckley, and that's that sandstone corridor. That's where they went into Wisconsin and Michigan, and that was in the late 80s and early 90s. Now wolves are quite extended into Minnesota. The DNR's maps will show you where they're clearly down like Pine County, and so that's the result of lone wolves or dispersers.
So are the wolf population in Minnesota expanding, continuing?
Well, the range has been expanding for probably decades. So if you look at, like I said, 70s, wolf became protected with the 1973 Endangered Species Act. It was immediately kind of went to threatened, not truly an endangered species because there was maybe 400 animals in Minnesota. But by, a decade later, by 1990, down towards Grand Rapids, and then into the year 2010, seeing as far down as Pine River, Park Rapids, and then 2018, that range expansion brings it almost north of the cities and almost to the North Dakota border. So the population has been increasing. I would say, again, the DNR is originally was only doing 5-year estimates. Now, because of the population change, they're trying to do, annual estimates. I would say in the 70s, we had about 1,200 wolves, 1979. I think the highest population was in the year 2000, around over 3,000 wolves. And again, plus or minus 500 animals. It's not like they line up and you say, you're number one, you stay there, I need to count you. It's statistics, and it's hard for people to fathom.
It still seems like a really small amount of animals. When I think about black bears, there's 40,000 black bears, in Minnesota. Sure. And so how can that be a safe number? 4,000?
Well, it is. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the difference is, black bears obviously being omnivores, they can eat vegetable matter, they can eat grubs, they can eat plants. Wolves are true carnivores. I mean, they're, density-wise, you have to have a prey base that's going to be able to support them. You can't have more wolves than food supply. And so it relates to forestry. It relates to, right now what's going on outside. Winter storms. That's probably the biggest detriment to the white-tailed deer population is deep snow. So the density of wolves is tied to, the ecology is tied to the amount of food that they can consume and yet still leave in the population to reproduce and still have food. You can't eat yourself out of house and home and have so many animals, So it balances out okay. Plus, you have to recognize, compared to pre-European settlement, I mean, there is conflict with humans. There's conflict with livestock. There's conflict with automobiles. There's, animals need space, food, water, and cover. Space food, we know is deer. Space, meaning areas to roam. Typically, a wolf pack in Minnesota, maybe 5 animals will use 50 square miles or 100 square miles, depending upon how dense their prey is, So
yeah,
it works out.
Yeah, and I noticed, I was hearing in the news that they're talking about delisting wolves from the endangered species list or these protected species list. Does this open them up to being hunted again like we had in 2012, or what are we looking at here with the delisting?
Sure. So what the federal government did, the Fish and Wildlife Service delisted and said the wolf population they feel has been recovered. So we go way back. The Fish and Wildlife Service in 1992 wrote a recovery plan for Minnesota and said we'd like to ideally have about 1,200 to 1,250, I think was the number they chose, animals. Wisconsin, Michigan, they wanted 100 breeding pairs. Well, over time, the recovery goal was met. So the purpose of the Endangered Species Act is to get a species recovered. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service was charged with writing that recovery goal. So they were delisted in 2012, and then a lawsuit in 2014 put them back on the list because there was some defining language about endangered species. If they've been recovered in, in a significant portion of their range. Well, in Minnesota, their range, actually in North America, the pre-European range is pretty much all of the lower 48. And so a judge said, well, they're not really traditionally covered in their range. And so then the Fish and Wildlife Service studied a little bit more. And the reality is some of this range may never have wolves again because they're obviously human-centered areas. So the Fish and Wildlife Service had public hearings. They had judicial reviews, and they just made a ruling in November that says, despite, the fact that they've not completely returned to all of their range that was pre-European settlement, the fact is the core areas where wolves can live have wolves. So we have wolves in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. We have Yellowstone. We have Idaho, Washington, and now wolves coming into, obviously, Oregon. So they felt that it's time for the states to manage the wolves, and that's what's happened. So on January 4th, the ruling becomes final, and then it is up to each state to manage. So to answer your question, yes, the Minnesota DNR could very well have a season. They have not announced that yet. They have a roundtable of citizens as well as professionals on advisory, a technical advisory committee, and I expect to hear information coming out of that advisory team sometime in the next year. Typically, they're not going to hunt wolves. They want them to be prime, meaning their hides would be, in their full winter coats. So Minnesota would typically look at then a season coming next year, meaning probably into the fall, which they did in 2012.
Do you think gut reaction, or what's your gut feeling? Do you think they're going to open a season, or do you think they're just going to keep it status quo with their wolf
I think
population?
I think they will. From what I've been reading, and just some of the preliminary discussions, the Minnesota DNR has said that they want to maintain at least 2,500 wolves in the state. So their latest census in the year 2019 was 2,699, give or take 500 animals. So I think in the 2012 and 2013 season, and I believe it was about 400 animals that they targeted. They may not have again, their population goals are going to be influenced by, how this winter is. So coming into this winter, it's been great for deer because we've had no snow. That's not been very good for wolves. And so some of the new research coming out of Voyageurs National Park, where they actually have wildlife cameras and GPS cameras or GPS collars, they saw mortality on one pack that was almost like 70% of pups.
Wow.
So, yeah, huge. So the theory is, when you're going to set a population, you got to pay attention to what's going on with food, what's going on with weather. It's the same thing as a deer target. How many deer do you want in this zone? Well, how bad was the winter? How many does had fawns last year? Same kind of process goes on for wolves. Is there a disease that's going around? Is parvo an issue? Is there, ample food supply? Is the deer population down? That's going to be the wolf population is going to come down. So all those things have to be configured before the DNR would make any assessments on population.
Sure.
See, coyotes are obviously doing really well. But most people don't really know the differences between coyotes and wolves. Because, we have coyotes, they're thick in the cities and suburbs.
We got them all over up here.
Yeah. So can you, Lori, kind of explain in a nutshell the difference and why we probably won't have wolves in the suburbs?
Sure. So a wolf is called Canis lupus. That's its genus species name. A coyote is called Canis latrans. So they're different species. So a coyote typically does not need a pack. Most of our coyotes are going to be roughly, smaller than wolves, maybe standing 16 inches to 20 inches at the shoulder. Wolves will typically be, at least 25 inches and maybe even up to 32, 34 inches at the shoulder.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the name your price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan, and you may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
Weight-wise, that's the huge difference. Coyotes, a northern coyote is 40 pounds, You might get a bigger coyote where there's an absence of wolves, because in the absence of wolves, like on the East Coast, coyotes have been learning to fill that niche. They've been learning to pack up. And we're getting some big coyotes in Maine and, places that you're kind of questionable. But a coyote is an animal who has a smaller body size. And so they can survive on rodents. They can survive on smaller prey bases. Wolves, that'd be like eating a bowl of popcorn and expecting us to live as a human. The reality is wolves are large. They're anywhere from 60 to 110 pounds, here in Minnesota. And you need a large amount of food. They average about 3 to 5 pounds of meat a day. Now, they don't eat every day, so they might make a kill and gorge and eat 20% of their body weight at one time. So a wolf could eat, and we've seen this in captivity. They can eat 20 pounds in 5 hours and then go for 10 days without eating. Coyotes have a smaller frame, body size. They don't need a pack. They don't need the space, and that's why they can be more solitary. They can be more adaptable to humans. They can be more garbage driven. They've been riding the subways in Chicago, for God's sakes, so they're very adaptable. They've learned to figure out humans mean a food supply, wolves have figured out humans usually mean a bullet, and so let's maybe avoid that. So there's a difference in the ecology. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is a coyote basically, in a lot of ways, a mini wolf, or is there I mean, you mentioned body size, you mentioned what they're eating, but as far as what they are they just a mini wolf or completely different? I know they're different species, but completely different.
Well, I think there is a lot of difference because a coyote, they typically, like a male, parents don't necessarily pair up for the entire rearing of the pups. It may be a maternal thing, whereas a pack of wolves, there's as much parental involvement for the males as there is in the females in feeding them. I think the fact that they are bigger and they require more food resources, so the social dynamics is quite different, meaning that, if you're going to raise some pups, you need a pack to raise some pups, that are going to be eating, and wolf pups can be, and this is what's interesting, is it's very hard to mistake a wolf pup and a coyote. Even wolf pups at 3 months of age have feet that are, twice the size of coyotes, and a wolf pup can be 30, 40, 50 pounds in 4 months because they have to grow fast because they have to run with the pack by winter. So in that case, there's more social behavior. We always kind of joke is like, glad your dog came from a wolf and not a coyote, because your dog wouldn't care if you lived or died, because a coyote's just not that social, doesn't need that kind of bonding. And not saying that they don't have a bond, with and that's how they have pups, but it's not as defined as a pack bond of a larger carnivore.
Do wolves and coyotes kind of share territory, Lori?
Yeah, around here in Minnesota, not as much. That's one of the reasons why they say that coyotes seem to be extending their range down to the cities, is because we have so many wolves that have defended them. Wolves are very, very territorial. Obviously, anybody who's had a dog killed understands that, but they kind of drive coyotes out. The places that they kind of overlap seem to be where wolf populations are lower. And so Wisconsin's had some overlap to the point where there's even had some hybridized coyotes wolves, which has caused some really interesting DNA. But for the most part, if you have a very active wolf pack, they'll be territorial towards the coyotes and they'll be lethal towards the coyotes. In the West, wolves in the Western Rockies. They hate coyotes. They'll kill them, and they'll make no bones about it. So, but like I said, towards Wisconsin, there's a little bit of discussion about inbreeding. Even here in Minnesota, I talked to a deer hunter earlier this year who said he took a picture of something that looked kind of strange. It looked like a coyote, tall ears and skinny nose like a coyote, but it had the feet of a wolf, and it can happen. Hybridizing can happen, but it's typically where there's not. Yeah.
Oops.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was going to say, is there any truth to the rumor or myth that wolves, because I've heard this all my life, will indeed mate with domesticated dogs? If they're that much different, do they have an interest in mating with domesticated dogs, or are dogs more of a food source for the wolf than they are a mating opportunity?
Yeah, probably more of a food source, but also more of a territorial. Like, wolves are extremely possessive of their pups. And so one of the biggest challenges that I know Wisconsin has, because Wisconsin uses dogs to hunt bear, and so they let a dog off to go tree a bear. Well, they let it off in wolf country, and it's running unattended without a human. And they have a lot of mortality of dogs in Wisconsin that are bear dogs. So it's probably more territorial if they're killing them. So the breeding season is quite different for wolves than it is for dogs. Dogs can breed anytime during the year, twice in a year, whereas wolf breeding season is typically only in February, late January till March, depending upon the winter. So the timing is different. There's a lot of physiology that's different. Wolves only cycle once a year. Wolves usually don't come into sexual maturity till they're 18 to 24 months. Male wolves are not even fertile during any other time but that time. And so the idea of bringing them out to mate with them is probably more of a myth. Bringing them out to maybe kill them from territorial response is probably more realistic.
Yeah, I was just so curious about that because I've heard quite a few times say, well, my dog's half wolf. And now that you mention that, well, why would that wolf be even interested in that dog? Because it's not even the same, really, in a lot of ways, the same species.
Well, actually, that's up for debate right now, but they are still classifying the dog as Canis lupus familiaris, which means that they are wolf, but they're a subspecies of wolf called a familiaris subspecies. So they're actually closer. Dogs and wolves are closer in DNA than wolves and coyotes. So wolves and coyotes are like 4% different. So being the domesticated version of the wolf, they still kind of, and again, it's all about naming and scientific nomenclature, but at this point, they still kind of feel that the dog is so closely related to the wolf because of its ancestry. But you can have a wolf dog because humans in captivity do it. You know, they breed dogs and wolves. It's a very common thing, but it's a popular thing for people to do, to have exotic pets, and breeding either pure wolves in captivity or hybrids is something that people do. So that's how you get it. That didn't come from the wild. That came from somebody's petri dish. So, yep.
Interesting. Say, Joel, have you ever seen the documentary White Wolf?
Yeah.
Where Jim Brandenburg and David Meach go up to Ellesmere Island, and the wolves up there, apparently Lori had never seen people, and they weren't domesticated, but the amount of interaction that they had was just amazing. Can you talk about that?
They didn't fear them. Yeah.
Yeah. So their exposure to humans, obviously, first of all, it's dark 6 months out of the year, you know, at that far north, in northern latitudes. But the lack of exposure to humans from the standpoint, if you look at, North America, wolves have been bountied since the 1600s until, the Endangered Species Act in 1973. So there's a kind of a habituation, but almost like a negative response to humans because of that bounty history. Well, up in the Arctic, you don't have that kind of, you may have Aboriginal native people who might be hunting in that area, but not creating that kind of negative issue like a bounty would. So Jim and Dave were able to live with them. They were able to, ride ATVs to kill sites, to observe them, go to den sites. That was filmed actually in 1986. That was kind of my first experience with Dave and Jim. Was they had actually the North Pole expedition with Paul Shirky had gone up to the North Pole, said these wolves were just there. They weren't afraid of our dogs. They weren't afraid of our staff on this North Pole expedition. Jim and Dave went up the following year in '87 and filmed. And Dave actually continued his research up into the year 2000, monitoring these wolves. So it's just a lack of negative conditioning that there's an absence of fear avoidance. Whereas wolves in our neck of the woods, for the most part, unless they've been fed or some other issue, for the most part they're pretty skittish and and see a human and typically cross the road, or maybe under a deer stand they might get a whiff of some deer scent and be a little bit more tolerant. But yeah, that's quite a difference in that kind of environment.
But it was interesting to note that these wolves were actually seeming to reach out to David and Jim, kind of on a social level almost. It was weird.
Yeah, they're social carnivores. There's no doubt. It's in their DNA to be social. I think even Dave and Jim said, when they first went there, they were sleeping in sleeping bags and they didn't know. And I think there's a clip there where Jim says something about learning to speak wolf, a half bark. He lets out a half bark when wolves got too close to his camera gear, and a half bark is a threat display, and the wolves took off. So I think, the reality is they didn't know what to expect. And they were fortunate enough to know that they were fortunate enough to have that experience, that they, did get into their stuff. They didn't, show any threat towards them. But still being able to speak wolf was really helpful for them.
Well, I think the most amazing part was them going into a den and actually handling some of the pups, and the wolves allowed it. Just amazing.
Gosh, that is cool.
Go back to yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say that's just cool. I mean, that's just amazing because it just shows you how much conditioning versus nature is going on because of that threat.
It was a virgin situation. These wolves had maybe never seen a human, and the humans at this point hadn't done anything wrong to them, and so there was a apparent trust developed. And I mean that takes a lot of trust.
It sure does. And I think one thing I would say, if you go back to Barry Lopez's book, who wrote Of Wolves and Men years and years and years ago, Barry talked about the old-time trappers and how going into dens was some way that, that was in the bounty system. Wolves always seem to have that a little bit of fear avoidance, where bears will go after you if you go near their cubs. Wolves always seem to have a DNA fear response in that human kind of in that human kind of centered environment that was related to the bounty. And so again, I think that's a real speaks to that pack animal. We call it neophobic. As a matter of fact, in captivity, if we don't bottle feed them by 12 to 14 days of age, if we let them go to be 21 days of age, or, like you would with a dog, 6 weeks with their mom, they already are so afraid of you, they just kind of pace in captivity. So all the wolves I work with are bottle fed early on.
You got to do it quick. You got to get the socialization almost immediately is what you're saying. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
I remember reading stories where trappers would want to free a wolf from a trap, and they would just go up and just free it, and the wolf would just kind of cower. An animal like that could kill you so easy.
I wonder about that, and I was just kind of talking with somebody about that. Is it just Minnesota nice that trappers here talk about that? You talk to the Alaskan trappers, and whether wolves are a whole different story. So even on the Moose Project, I remember that. Yeah, Minnesota wolves nice. So even on the Moose Project, I know the pilots were talking about in Alaska when they were collaring calves, you had to have the helicopter nearby because the moose would charge the biologists. Well, here in Minnesota, they did the moose study, and they collared calves, and the moose left and abandoned them. I mean, they had to quit the project because they had so many abandoned moose. So there's got to be geographic differences. And I only go back to Alaska because you got wolves, you got grizzlies, you've got, Kodiak bear, you got more predators on the landscape. You got to wonder if they don't have more aggression because they got more competition.
Yeah.
Where here, wolves have humans. We have humans and we have black bears, and black bears are really only competitive with wolves in the spring of the year. Once bears turn to blueberries, they're not a threat to wolves anymore, So.
Well, it's rumored that the cougar's making a comeback in our area, and I can attest to that because I've seen 2 cougars in the last 4 or 5 years in the wild. And, and you too, Doug, you've seen them as well. Yep. And now, is there any conflict between cougars and wolves, or are cougars the apex predator when it comes to a wolf, or will they take a wolf? Because I've heard a rumor that a cougar will indeed take a wolf as prey.
Yeah, in the western U.S., where there's far more cougars and wolves intermixing, there's been a few circumstances where cougars have killed wolves, and then wolves have also killed cougars, but cougars have the upper hand because they can climb, and they can ambush. From what I understand, and I've not seen any substantial information to show about reproducing cougars here. Are these cougars traveling through? I mean, the whole issue of, are they coming from South Dakota? Are they, are they really truly a population? And is questionable. I know, their home range is huge. I mean, so like even in the West, you're talking about 500, 600 miles, square miles of area. So I think competition-wise, there may be some competing, but I would say even like Fisher, compete with deer with wolves to a certain level, even bobcats. I read a study where bobcats in Minnesota are responsible for 18% of the deer mortality. It seems weird to me from such a little cat, but
I was going to say
again,
they're
that whole idea
tiny.
you can climb. They're tiny, yeah, but they can ambush. They can kill their prey. They can jump and kill their prey and make a lethal kill. So I just don't see it being large enough numbers to be a competition issue. With wolves have far more issues with lack of food, reforestation, lack of food for young forest for deer, and deep snows making deer populations remain low. Those are our biggest challenges for wolves.
Okay, so the deer are Oh, go ahead, sir.
Well, I'm just going to say cats are afraid of dogs.
They are.
Period.
I know.
Yeah.
I got a cat and I got a dog, and I see the interaction between it. Yeah. But my dog is afraid of my cat.
Yeah, I would say there's enough cats out there that have slapped the dog in the nose to say that. I would imagine a cougar coming down at your face. The wolves are going to back off.
Say, Lori, I know Joel's got some question, but I've got to ask.
It's all good.
You must have witnessed a number of weird things with ravens and wolves and their behaviors and the way they interact and their relationships. What can you tell us about ravens and wolves?
Well, I can say that that of all the species that we talk about social relationships, boy, ravens are tremendous in their communication. So the theory is, and again, this goes way back to Barry Lopez, but also things that we see, I pick up roadkill. I mean, that's what we do. That's what we feed the wolves. So I can tell you, if there's something dead, if there's 4 ravens together, you better look for something below them because something died. The theory is that wolves hear ravens and are drawn to them because there's a possibility for scavenging. But conversely, ravens hear howling, and they're there. I mean, their relationship, I think, is symbiotic, no doubt, because both of them will result in a food supply, whether wolves scavenge on what ravens have found or whether ravens feed what wolves have killed. It certainly makes them beneficial in that environment. Don't see a lot of deaths like a raven competition, ravens being killed, except in captivity. We picked one up this morning. We feed roadkill deer. Right now we're feeding hunter scraps from the deer hunters. And we got 30 ravens that live at the Wolf Center. And every once in a while, one of them takes a little bit too much of a chance. I've even seen ravens pull hair out of the tails of the captive wolves, making nesting material out of them. So I'd say the bolder the raven, the less likely that it's going to live very long. And that's true on the highway too. So
is it possible, Lori, that the ravens actually tell the wolf where the deer are? Where a living deer is.
Yeah, I've heard that. Again, that's kind of a hard one to tell. I've over the years I've done some aerial telemetry flights, collared wolves and flown over wolves and watch wolves sleeping, 100 yards from where deer are feeding. The reality is, I think it depends how hungry the wolf is. Again, if wolves are really hungry, they call it the song of death. In the West, they talk about this, that, when a pack of wolves moves through a valley and moves around elk, the elk know if the wolves are hunting or if they're just moving through. And so I think there may be something about energy, there may be something about attitude, there's some hormone that is excreted, maybe it's cortisol, stress hormone, and that might be the communication that they're picking up on. So when the wolves are hungry, there might be more of a intensity on how they act, and the ravens pick up on that. And I think there's a lot about animal behavior that we'll never know. I think whether it be pheromones or whether it be hormones or whether it be body language. Actually, I'm working on a study with someone at the Wolf Center now on a mirror recognition study with wolf pups, meaning, do they look at a mirror and know it's them, or do they think it's another animal, another dog or another, because the theory is that, wolves don't just chase something down. There's a strategic cooperation. There seems to be some kind of communication that says, you wait here, I'll drive them out. It's like I got a little game board, I'm going to drive these wolves to this snowbank, and you're going to wait here, and you're going to kill them. How do they do that? How do they make that cognitive leap from I'm going to kill something to I'm going to work together as a group and be successful?
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see what your study bears out.
Yeah, we've already tried it on the adult wolves but at the Wolf Center, half of our wolf pen is windows from the auditorium. Well, they've been staring at glass forever, and what they reveal on the other side is humans, and so the adults failed their recognition. I mean, they didn't fail, meaning they knew it was them, but they didn't care, So the whole idea of self-recognition is that, you put a mark on their head and they look in the mirror and they recognize, oh, that's my head. It's got a mark on it, and they kind of wipe that mark. Our wolves, we put blue chalk on their head, and they just went about their business, So we'll figure out. They'll start with pups that don't have a self-reflective window in their exhibit and see what we get there. So.
Do your wolves in captivity, do they get excited when there's visitors to the Wolf Center? Is there a difference in them, the way they act, or could they care less if people are watching or not?
Oh, yeah, they're pretty stimulated. And so this pandemic has been kind of hard without the visitors. They're most stimulated by young children running. So the prey drive, the predatory drive, we call it the wounded prey response. Kids running, kids screaming, stimulate the predatory brain. So it's no different than a squirrel running in front of your dog. As you said, your dog doesn't listen or doesn't hear that far. Well, it could be because its brain is already stimulated in the predatory drive. And so that's what they miss. They like watching the kids who run and scream and move. And, we have a safe glass, but, we're always something. I'm ready with a distraction when toddlers come, that's for sure. So
what do you use as a distraction? Like if you have to, what is the distraction you employ?
Well, so the summer I use beaver tail popsicles. So I take beaver tails and put them in ice cubes and make a big old popsicle and then throw it in the pond. Pig's ears, they love pig's ears. We cut up deer hides, little strips of deer hide. They can play tug of war. Venison cakes, freeze-dried venison. We call them venison cakes. Peacock feathers. That was something that we got at a zoo. One of our colleagues at the Minnesota Zoo sent us. They thought those were cool. So anything that's natural. I don't use dog products because if you have a dog, you probably recognize that the dog toy industry makes little squeaky things inside your dog toy, so that your dogs get excited about it, bite it, shred it, then you have to go buy another one. But the reality is they're tapping into the predatory drive. High-pitched squeaks makes them excited. And so I try to avoid that because they'll just shred any kind of... I gave one a Kong earlier this summer, the big hard plastic you're supposed to put peanut butter in. It lasted like 15 minutes. They were done. They chewed it. I'm like, okay. Yeah. They eat a moose, obviously, so a Kong's not a big deal. So,
how long do wolves live in the wild, Lori?
Boy, I would say if you got to be 10, you were one of the lucky ones. Really? Here in Minnesota, average is probably 8, but half of them don't make it to 5. That's just the way it is. I've got right now a captive wolf who's 16 and a half. And that's old. For captivity, you would never see that in the wild. Arthritis, bad teeth. Keep in mind, in captivity, I wheel their deer in on a wheelbarrow. You got to catch a deer who's kicking with a hoof or a moose who's kicking. And so we get a lot of skulls of dead wolves that have, a broken jaw, broken ribs that have been healed over. There's risk. I mean, those are prey defensive weapons, and there's risk in the hunt that can affect their lifespan. But most of it's disease. Parvo, I shouldn't say disease, starvation, not enough food resources. If you take the human component out, the number one thing that's killing wolves, other than the pup disease issue, is competition with other wolves. So adult wolves will fight for territory, and those fights can be to the death. And so they're extremely territorial with each other, and not to mention, like I said, with dogs.
Are they cannibalistic at times? I mean, if things are too lean, will they actually turn on each other?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Voyager's wolf project up in Voyager National Park just had a clip of, I think they were yearlings, where it appeared that siblings, one sibling cannibalized on the other and then cached the other's head. So cannibalism is not common, but it does happen. And the worst time for wolves, a lot of people think, winter is always a bad time. Winter is a good time for wolves. When they get deep snow, they can take advantage of the snow. Mm-hmm. They got big feet. They can, go over to things. Biggest cannibalism is going to happen probably late in the fall when the highest food pressure for their pups, or we have a winter where we have no snow. I think that's when you've seen evidence of cannibalism. Conversely, wolves will also surplus kill, meaning they'll kill more than they can eat in winters of deep snow. And so, the idea of cannibalizing is a hunger issue. The idea of not killing killing and not eating everything, called surplus killing, is both of them are tied to snow levels and pressure, especially going into the fall and winter.
Very interesting. See, Lori, have they learned anything new in the last 10 years about wolves? How they navigate, or their eyesight, or their sense of smell? Has there been any kind of breakthroughs?
Yeah, I would say GPS collars have made some revolutionary data that you couldn't get before. Before, you just put a collar on a wolf, you'd fly, once a week and say, oh yeah, they're alive. We can see them from the air. We can count the packs. And that's kind of how the census is done. This pack is using this territory. And after a year of getting fixes once a week or whatever, you'd have their positions. Well, you put a GPS collar on, and I think there's two things coming out of it. First of all, how far do they travel? I know the wolves that they brought to Isle Royale, they had a GPS collar on it. One of them left the island and went back. It was a Minnesota wolf, went to Canada. It wasn't a great experience living in Minnesota because they trapped her and put her on an island, and she went back up to Canada. She actually came through Ely. It was kind of funny. So that the dispersal, where do they go? And that's actually what Voyagers has been doing is their study is really looking at summer prey. Because in the winter, obviously, people know there's a wolf kill. Anybody who lives on a lake says, oh, yeah, there's blood all over the place. There's ravens, the ice. There's a carcass. But in the summer, when they're eating a fawn and they're eating a beaver, there wasn't a lot of information about that because, first of all, they eat it in 20 minutes and there's nothing left. You got a hoof or you got a skull of a beaver left. So the GPS collars that they're using in Voyagers has really given a lot more information about the influence of wolves on controlling beaver populations. If you look at some of the research coming out of Yellowstone, it was beaver and that...
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy is suspected of having killed as many as 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series that investigates the crimes that shocked the nation.
The thing everybody thought they knew wasn't the whole story.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now. Devil in Disguise. Only on Peacock. Whatever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively. Bears beats The Office on Peacock. Stream every moment from Dunder Mifflin and explore bonus extras and exclusives. Plus, if you're looking for more classic hits, you can stream every episode of Parks and Recreation, 2.5 Men, and every season of SNL. In the mood for something brand new? Check out Peacock's original comedies, The Amber Ruffin Show, and Saved by the Bell. Whether you're craving a new binge or familiar fave, you can find tons of comedy hits on Peacock. Get started for free at peacocktv.com.
Kind of benefited to some extent from having wolves because trees that are traditionally beaver habitat, willows and things, were being way overbrowsed by some of the herbivores, and so beaver were limited. So as you start having more wolves to control the elk, the beaver, the trees grew back, and that changed the dynamics for the beaver. Well, then beaver, we all know, I mean, they're the biggest engineers in the planet. They make a dam, they flood an area, you've got waterfall, you've got all kinds of other things going on. So that's called a trophic cascade effect. And so this idea that wolves are controlling beaver populations actually influences or helps forestry, because beavers will flood out areas. So that's probably, I would say, the biggest information that's come out. GPS collars that you can get a fix every 20 minutes, so you can follow where they've been, how far did they go, and then you want to know if they're eating a beaver. Well, just look at your data. In the last 2 days, they've stayed in the same spot. Well, you better go look for a beaver tooth, because they probably just killed one, So that's pretty cool.
I was going to ask, I guess, a question. This is going to be, I'm trying to think the right way to formulate, so I'm just going to ask right up. Let's just say overnight, all of our wolves disappeared. We don't have them anymore. They're extinct. Whatever scenario you want, fill it in. We don't have them anymore. What happens to our ecosystem? What happens to the deer population? What would a world look like without wolves?
Well, certainly I think we've got parts of the United States where we know what that looks like. We see, obviously, without an upper-level predator, we see deer repopulating or populating to the point where they're browsing and they're influencing what trees come back. I'm not sure in Gilbert if you guys have seen this, but there's places up here in Ely where we call them a browse line. And so, in other words, there's a lake right outside of Ely, Little Long Lake, actually up the Echo Trail. You look at that lake, it's cedar all the way around, and it looks like somebody took a lawnmower and just mowed it up 7 feet high. Well, that's as high as deer can reach. You talk to foresters who try to regenerate white pine. They can't do it with deer, because obviously they're bud capping, they're browsing, and so the way that the ecosystem, the trees that are growing, the food availability to deer, obviously with no pressure on their population, they're going to eat more, they're going to reproduce more, they're going to impact that population more. So I think first thing you'll notice is the forest and places that don't have wolves. We'll talk about the biggest challenge they have in growing trees is deer, and so that makes it even that much more challenging. And then when deer are taken out the understory, well, then that affects birds. That affects, there's many things that are influenced because of that. And then obviously beaver go back to a population where they're, higher than people want. Beaver are trapped because, people come in conflict with beaver, but beaver hides have been so low, the price of them, and there's not a lot of trappers anymore. You talk to, the county spends thousands and thousands of dollars on roads that are flooded, culverts that are dammed up because of beaver. So you can look at it from an ecological standpoint, but you can also look at it as an economic standpoint. Loss of forest, loss of trees, and obviously influence of things that change the landscape.
Yeah, so having that high predator in the woods not only economically makes sense, but ecologically as well, because that explosion of those populations would lead to disease and unwanted deaths like running into cars. Yeah, I mean, more deer killed on the roads. And, of course, like I said, the spread of more disease, stuff like that. So the wolves do play an enormous part in checks and balances of nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of research going on right now with chronic wasting disease, because obviously, wolves aren't, those are animals that would be an easy kill. And so they're opportunistic carnivores. And what that means is they take the opportunity, if you're going to expend energy in order to get calories, it makes sense that they're going to expend the energy on things that are easier to kill. And so CWD deer, chronic wasting disease deer, are obviously, something that they would target. So there's been a little bit of research coming out, especially out of the western states, about that. And obviously people will say, well, hunters can take that place of curbing populations, but most hunters probably are not going to shoot a sick or animal that's going to look compromised like CWD, unless the DNR tells you to, because they want them out of the population. So there are people who have counterpoint said, well, yeah, humans we're at that same level, so we can do more to control deer populations with management, but it's not the same. I mean, taking a trophy 8-pointer is not the same as taking a sick, weakly animal who's got I've seen some deer pictures. There's some strange things going on there, weird growths. Yeah. And, I saw something over by Hibbing on a wildlife camera. I was like, what is wrong with that deer? And wolves are going to look at it as a meal, where we're, going to think twice before we pull the trigger on it,
I was just going to say, as a hunter, I only kill what I eat, or I eat what I kill. And you're right, I would never take one that looked that horrible. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was just going to say that everybody thinks wolves only eat deer. And of course, you're talking about the beavers. But don't they also eat rabbits, mice, other animals, birds?
Not as much. Maybe there's something that they're going to catch, snowshoe hare, things for their pups. But, really, because of the body size, fox, fisher, marten, coyotes, they fill that niche on eating those smaller prey availability. Typically, wolves are going to kill a large ungulate and then a secondary prey base like a beaver. Our beaver are coming in at 60, 70 pounds. So we're not talking about small, But,
jeez, that's a big beaver.
It's just, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what. Yeah, we buy beaver at the Wolf Center, and they are huge. There's some big beaver out there.
Jeez, I used to trap them. I never had a beaver that big. Wow.
Yeah, they've been doing quite well. So there's on average they're about 25 to 40 pounds for the beaver. But we had a guy brought us one that was 75 pounds. Wow. I was like, holy mackerel. So So the body weight of a wolf, the amount of energy. While I'm sure a mole or a vole or deer mouse would be fun to catch. The reality is the calorie output's not worth the calorie input, and so that's typically a fox, coyote, other smaller carnivores.
I did watch a wolf one time, and it was a wolf leaping in the air and doing the pounce like a fox would, on snow. Yep. And I don't know how much time it spent doing that, but it was interesting. Just to see this big, huge animal, looking for a mouse.
Yeah. Well, times are tough. Like I say, if they're gonna be pouncing on snow like that, chances are it wasn't very deep. But it, that's called a stiff leg jump. We see the captive wolves. It's in their DNA to do it. And like a lot of times, young animals don't have the calorie balance figured out. Probably wouldn't be seeing that in a 5-year-old, but I'd say a yearling. They just do that just for the fun of it, So,
yeah, they're teenagers yet, or they're in that stage of youth yet. They're still learning, I would suppose, their own boundaries.
Exactly.
So what is some advice for people that see a wolf? Is there a way they should behave? Something they should do, not do?
Yeah, so the first thing I always say is if you're seeing one and it's not looking a little bit concerned about you, I always say in the back of my mind, okay, what's going on with that animal? Is it sick? Has it been habituated? Has it been somebody's pet who decided they wanted to release it in northern Minnesota because they wanted to be free willy? What's going on with this thing? Why isn't it acting like a normal? And I say that with anything, with fox, with fisher, you name it. Why is this not showing a fear response to humans? So we always say, you make yourself tall, make yourself heard. Those are two important lessons, whether they be bears or wolves, because, just let them know that you're there. Because if you're downwind of them, and they're on a hunt, it's kind of like calling your dog off a squirrel. They're in the predatory drive. They're focused on something else. They don't even hear you, So once you stop that predatory drive and you make yourself known, never run. It's never a good idea to run from any carnivore. Slowly back away. always watch it. Keep your eye on what it's doing and look for body language that shows some aggression, like you saw with jaw sparring with the teeth being open. We call that a lip curl, hackles, are a threat display. But I always watch their tail. We just had at the Wolf Center I manage the Wolf Helpline, which is like a place for local residents in Ely, Babbitt Tower to call and say, I got this wolf issue, can you give me some advice? So there was a dog who was grabbed on the Trezona Trail right outside of Ely, and the owner of the dog went after the wolf, and the wolf, I asked him point blank, what was that wolf's tail doing when you went after it? He goes, it was tucked under its body. Well, if it's tucked under its body, that's a good thing because that's fear avoidance. But if you go after a wolf and his tail is straight up in the air, that's a bad decision because that tail posture tells me that wolf was very confident in that interaction. We want to see a tucked tail. So I ask people, watch its facial expressions, watch its hackles, watch its tail, and then you decide if that's going to be a threat. And in the law, you could, even when they were protected under threatened, you could shoot a wolf if you felt it was an imminent threat. Well, nobody defined that. Nobody knows what that means. So, I get people call me and says a wolf walked, outside my door. And I said, okay, what else did it do? Well, it was just there. Well, that's not an imminent threat. That just happened to be, that's just nature, a friend of mine who works at a dispatch said he gets calls all the time. A coyote walked, through my yard, and the response is, yes, that's what coyotes do, and tell me that it's done something, tell me that it took your cat, and I'll come out there. But so we have that issue, people just have to recognize
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's important, like you're just saying, people have to recognize the difference between a threat display and just them being there, being them, being in their area, because there is a lot of confusion.
I think one of the things that I would say for deer hunters is that on a gut pile, again, because that time of the year, November, is when the pups are really, really growing, I've heard people say, I shot my deer and I went to go get my ATV and I came back and the wolves were on it. What do I do? Yeah, that's a whole different story. Then I wouldn't just walk up to it. Then you got a gun in your hand, shoot it over their heads. Make some noise, because I think that's a whole different circumstance.
Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I forgot my question. Oh. What was the original population, do you think, of wolves in the U.S. back 400 years ago, 500 years ago? What would be a guess?
Yeah, it's a good question, Doug. I think some people have theorized. Now, again, it's hard. I mean, the bounty started in the 1600s in the East Coast, and so we're talking about a significant amount of reduction of wolves before really data was.
Let's go back 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago.
Well, let's put it this way. You didn't have white-tailed deer here in the north, and so you didn't have an abundance of prey. You had moose, you had caribou, which are known to have a wider area of food resources that they have to harvest. So I would say, even in talking to native elders who talk about generation after generation, in their stories, in their life, many would say that there weren't as many wolves because obviously, and we know this now from science, you talked about Ellesmere. Well, an Ellesmere pack of wolves might be 800 square miles because they're probably closest to what I would say might have been across all of North America, large prey species that were maybe grazers that took more space, harder to kill, bison. I mean, let's just look at 1,000 years ago in the bison population and even what's going on in Yellowstone with bison. The packs that hunt bison, they're big packs because they need a lot of them. They're roaming a long distance because they don't kill a lot of them, meaning, a bison's a formidable.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.
Prey species. So I think that probably tells me, again, looking at all that idea that you would have more area that had wolves, but less density, meaning they wouldn't be as visible. There wouldn't be as many in a certain area because they had to be spread out because of what they were hunting.
Interesting.
Yeah,
the whole Yellowstone thing, though, too, is interesting because, Doug, you'd mentioned that before we went on air, that with the wolves coming back to Yellowstone in a big way, it's changed the environment of Yellowstone itself. And can you speak on that a little bit, Lori? I mean, how has that changed Yellowstone National Park?
Yeah, there's a lot of scientific papers that have come out of there called Trophic Cascade, the influence of wolves. So if you have less elk, you have less browsing of plants, you have more plants coming back. And so there's this kind of this idea that because you're controlling the herbivores, you're getting more vegetation, and then you're getting more songbirds, you're getting, again, beaver came back, or or beaver populations were increased, etc. The danger in that is, there's just as much problem with making the wolf into a god as it is making the wolf into a devil. You can't always just say, okay, this is the premier species, it did all this on its own. Well, there's a lot of factors that happened, so not to mention they also reintroduced like 140 beaver in the same, area. The Forest Service did about the same time that the wolves came back. So we recognize, the top-level carnivores do influence prey species, which does influence forest management, which does influence bird populations, which influences ecology. That's trophic cascades. But whether the wolves did it all on their own, or whether it's just the nature of how ecological systems work when they're whole, they function better. That's just the ecology of Yellowstone. So what I think people had, they got too romanticized, and I'm sure you've probably seen the videos. They got too romanticized about the wolf, like, oh, the wolf's going to save everything. It's not fair to the species to do that, because there's sometimes where wolves are in a habitat that's beneficial, and there's other times where there's a lot of agriculture where that wolf presence is not beneficial. And so, we always talk about it as wildlands. The one thing the Wolf Center has in their mission is that in order to have wolves, you have to have wildlands. I mean, the reality is they need to have that space. They need to have a whole, complete ecological system. Putting a wolf in a farm field in Iowa, it's got deer, but, it's not a complete ecological system. It's not going to be a functioning system. So that's what limits wolf populations as much, I think, is the wildlands piece, and why you only find them in places like, the northern, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Colorado is now just passed a resolution to be able to introduce wolves. But, the Yellowstone ecosystem, the reality is it's still wild. And that's the key to this large predator.
What about red wolves? What's going on with the red wolf?
Yeah, so they just recently had some D-Day. The red wolves are in North Carolina. Right now, there's more in captivity than there are in the wild. So Fish and Wildlife Service is still treating them as critically endangered. And I should have mentioned that the Fish and Wildlife Service, even though they delisted the gray wolf in the lower 48 states here, they're still protecting the Mexican wolf, and that's another critically endangered species in the Southwest. So the red wolf is actually not a gray wolf. It's Canis rufus. It's a smaller version of the gray wolf. For years, they were debating about, is this real or is this just a wolf-coyote hybrid? Well, recent DNA, and that's one thing, you asked about science, I'd say DNA is probably the second thing, in addition to GPS collars, that's really revolutionized this field. Recent DNA clearly shows that this is not a hybrid. It's its own right to exist as a separate species. But politically, this animal, as soon as they come out from release spots, there's mortality. There's hunter-caused mortality, both Mexican wolf and the red wolf. And so they're not putting as many into the wild as they were until they can figure out public education. How do we get people to accept them? And how do we get, obviously, conflict resolution under control? Because they're both in areas that have a livestock component. Obviously, the North Carolina, I mean, it's not like northern Minnesota. It's not like the Boundary Waters. Granted, you've got the Smoky Mountains, you've got Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge, but you don't have, in between that, you've got a lot of human landscape. And that's the problem. Same thing with the Mexican wolf in the Southwest is, people got to be willing to accept them. You just can't keep raising them in captivity, putting them out, and having them shot. So it's a dual process of ecology and education that needs to go on in both of those. And so the red wolf's in a standstill right now, being bred in captivity. There are places that are maintaining them as zoos, and they're maintaining genetic diversity. That's the key thing. When you only have 100 or so in the population, you can't let them inbreed. You have to keep the genetics, pure as you can, because inbreeding is going to create its own set of problems with animals' health and ability to maintain themselves. So that's where they're at, standstill, but they still have a right to exist according to the federal government.
What's the difference between a timber wolf, a gray wolf, and an Arctic wolf?
That's a great question. So timber wolf, actually in the naming, so they have this name nomenclature. So biologists get together and say, hey, I want to call this something. So originally, North America had 24 subspecies of gray wolf. We had the eastern timber wolf here living in Minnesota. We even named a basketball team after him. Well, then in 1992, and geneticists got together and said, and it was all about, before it was about morphology, it was about skeletal structure. It says, okay, this wolf looks like this, let's call it a subspecies. And conveniently, 24 of those subspecies, half of them were named after the biologists who studied them. So in 1982, a group of mammalogists got together and said, wait a minute, wolves can disperse 400 miles. How can we have 5 different subspecies in Alaska? This doesn't make any sense. They started looking at DNA, and it's like, no, we don't have 24 subspecies of wolves. We have 5. And so the gray wolf is Canis lupus. We have the Mexican wolf. We have the Arctic wolf. We have the northwestern wolf. We have what's called the Great Plains wolf, which is now named the Minnesota wolves. And the eastern timber wolf, the 5th subspecies, is what they felt was in the East Coast, east of the Mississippi, all the way over to the east. Right now, it's only in Canada, in like an Algonquin provincial park. That's kind of population is distinct. So 5 subspecies of gray wolf, and that's it. No more 24. No more Bob the gray wolf in Alaska, named after the biologist. They said this doesn't make any sense. So there's 5 of them, and that's kind of where we're at. So an Arctic wolf is a gray wolf, even though it's white, and that's the most confusing thing.
Oh, Lori, what's the biggest species? What's the biggest species of wolf?
Northwesterns. I've got a northwestern subspecies. He weighs 150 pounds at the International Wolf Center. No crap. Animal. I have to feed him, and it's going to be 20 below wind chill tomorrow. So I'll tell you, that boy is going to be eaten. But my other ones, I have Arctics who are 90 pounds. And the other wolf that we have at the Wolf Center is a Great Plains wolf, Minnesota version. He's about 110. So those Rocky Mountain wolves, those Canadian Rockies up into Alaska, there's some big ones. 130 pounds in the wild, 150 in captivity, because we treat for parasites and we, wheel in their food so they don't have to expend any calories, So, but that's, and it's always confusing because people say, oh, I saw a 200-pound wolf. I'm like, I don't think so. They're muscular, so they're big, and their feet are big. But you'd be surprised, granted he's big, but he looks like he weighs, I when I ask people the weight, they say, oh yeah, he looks like he's going 210, he's 150, but he looks like he's bigger. That's just kind of the deceiving nature of muscles. So.
A few years ago, I was out hunting. I was grouse hunting at the time. This is fall of the year. And I was in an embarrass area. and I saw, which is, I know you know where Embarrass is, and I was out there, and I saw a wolf. I tell you, Lori, damn near as tall as a deer. It was the biggest wolf I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
It was huge. And of course, he wanted nothing to do with me, thank God. Because I was startled by him, and he was startled by me, and he went the other direction. Thank the good Lord. But they can be intimidating.
That's the big thing. Yep.
I was driving the roads up in Canada, and we were grouse hunting, looking for grouse. And up ahead of me, I thought, why are there donkeys?
Yep.
And I'm with this guy, and I'm like, and he's like, he goes, yeah, why are there burros? We got closer, and they were wolves.
Gosh, it's a
they
big
were
wolf.
so big. They looked like small horses.
Yeah, that's the big thing I noticed, and I've many video clips of wolf crossing the road. That's the first thing I look at. Is that a deer? And then you see the tail, then you see the head. You're like, nope, so that long lanky leg. I mean, that's what the ecological system, they evolved to be able to manage winter conditions. You know, I mean, they don't have a barrel chest. They're not a Labrador. You know, they got a keel-like chest, which always makes them appear so much bigger because it's a body frame on top of a bunch of leg. You know, even as a pup, you know, you notice those feet and you notice those tracks, and that's the real thing about wolves and coyotes. We just had in Sudan, we had picked up a deer that somebody said, oh, wolves killed it, and we looked around, they're all coyote tracks, you know, and you know, it's like you can tell a wolf track from a coyote pretty easily.
Oh yeah, yes you can, Lori. You know, you're running a great place up there, the International Wolf Center, great educational place. I highly recommend that people go over there once we can do so. Great place to learn. Why don't you tell people a little bit about it and how they can get more information about the International Wolf Center?
Sure. So we are currently closed because of the governor's restrictions, but we do anticipate opening in January. We are open Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the winter, and great time to see wolves in the wintertime. They're much more active than July. But typically by May 15th, we open 7 days a week. So we currently, because of the COVID restrictions, we require a registration in advance. So if you go to wolf.org, so that's www.wolf.org, and there'll be a place to book a spot. But our job, and we've been, like I said, I started in 1989. Our job is to get people the facts. You know, it's not our place to judge how people want to think about wolves. It's not our place, but we want to make sure that, you know, you're understanding the fact of the nature of the wolf. You know what that experience is, so good or bad. The reality is it's just wolf behavior, and so we want to make sure people are aware of that. So people can come to our website. We have webcams on our wolves. You know, they're on right now, and I just checked them here a little bit ago, and so it's still blowing snow up there. So you can check us out on our webcams. You can read about, I do wolf vlogs. I do videos once a week called YouTube videos to teach people about wolves. We Zoom into classrooms for people. We'll Zoom into libraries. We'll Zoom anywhere anybody wants us to be. So that's the way that we reach out to people. But I think the main thing that we want to try to do is, again, just make sure people are talking about facts. You know, love them, hate them. You know, make sure your reasons are sound and they're factual.
Lori, thank you for coming on the show and dispelling some of the myths and educating us on wolves and the way they are and the species of them and their habitats and things like that. And you can visit the International Wolf Center's website at wolf.org. And she wasn't kidding. There's the webcam right there. Boy, it looks cold outside still, Lori. It is blowing out there. But
I'll
again,
be on
thank
that
you
webcam
so much.
tomorrow doing work. So thank you.
I'll be looking in.
Much.
I'll be looking in. That very interesting stuff. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Lori.
All right.
And Lori Scmidt, everybody,
Thanks,
and
Joel.
it's been
Thanks,
an
Doug.
honor. Yep. You take care now. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you guys. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
And we are also signing off. This is Joel Sturgis, Doug Highcheck, and we would like to wish all of you guys a Merry Christmas and a very safe Christmas. Take care of each other, love each other, Those wolves are darn cool, aren't they?
After Hours AM is a production of Midwest Radio Productions. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And please visit www.americas-most-haunted.com.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the name your price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon, and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.